I call Matt Ducey.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. It's a great honour to rise and speak to this bill for the first time, the third reading of the Christchurch City Council Rates Validation Bill. And I must admit I feel like I've been on the highs of the Christchurch Arts Centre Bill and the low of this new Rates Validation Bill. And it is something that is a bill and legislation that is very important to me, Mr Speaker. As the electorate MP for Waimakariri, a lot of people think that the electorate actually mirrors the Waimak district borders, but in fact my electorate covers part of northern Christchurch, Northcote, Redwood, Belfast and Northwood, and about a quarter of the population of my electorate live in Christchurch City Council. So it's a very important issue for my constituents, and it's a very important issue for me. And I must join in with the rest of the members of the House in acknowledging the work of the Honourable Nicky Wagner, who has brought this local bill tonight. A very hard-working minister who has shepherded what could have been a very controversial bill through the legislative process, and you very much see why that minister has turned a red seat blue. Can I also acknowledge our chair of the Local Government and Environment Select Committee, equally for shepherding a bill through a process that could have been very controversial. And I do acknowledge the sentiments from the other side of the House about respect for local government. My late grandfather was actually on Christchurch City Council for over 30 years in the 60s, 70s and 80s, and spent several of them as Deputy Mayor of the Christchurch City Council, and probably that's where my political ambitions hark back to. And I very much respect people of his ilk, that it was about civic service and civic duty. And so we must be mindful of that when we do critique local government performance. But on saying that, we should not reward poor performance. And if you do not challenge something, then you are complicit in it. And so I think it was very well surmised by the Minister when she introduced the third reading, and she said the bill, although controversial, was simple, straightforward, short and very focused. I mean, at first I didn't know if she was talking about me or Ron Mark, but she's quite right. It is a controversial bill, simple, straightforward, short and very focused. But could have caused a lot of issues for the Christchurch people. And I must say, Mr Speaker, I mean, that's the last thing Christchurch people needed at the moment. I don't need to rehash the last few years, but we all know it's been a very difficult time for people in Christchurch and of course in the Waimak and Selwyn as well. So it's quite right that we take a very diligent and thoughtful approach with this legislation. And what we do know, if we look at it in some detail, Mr Speaker, that every June the Council resolves to set their rates for the next financial year. And we know with this rates resolution it did not meet the requirements. And the Minister referred to this about the issue arose from trying to put things in simple language. And I actually have some sympathy for this, Mr Speaker. In my previous career in mental health, I managed a drug treatment service in London for the London Borough of Barnet, local authority in Northern London. And they had a policy of having simple English to make it accessible for people to engage with information and literature. But of course, when you're talking about technical information, sometimes if it is simplified, you do lose a lot in translation. So I can understand how this may have happened, but at the end of the day, like I say, we cannot reward poor performance, or if we don't challenge something, we are complicit in it. So we do know, Mr Speaker, that in all required information, there was available in policy and newspapers, but just not in the set resolutions. And there was other technical issues around targeted rates. We've heard a lot tonight about the issues around retrospective legislation. So overall, I think with the issues at hand for both the leadership of the Christchurch City Council and of course the Waimak District Council and the Selwyn as they lead through the recovery. We just need to be mindful that we do need positive relationships in central and local governments. I want to thank our Chair, Scott Simpson, for holding the Select Committee down in Christchurch for the day. Not only did we get the opportunity to go to the Christchurch Arts Centre, which was a valuable trip, but we also got to hear the submissions around this bill. There was only one, as people have spoken previously, and the councillor who did turn up, Glenn Livingston. And I know there has been some comment about his performance in that submission, but I would like to say in my dealings with that councillor, someone who's very humble and very hard-working in his region, which is primarily in eastern Christchurch. And we know they were hard hit by the earthquakes, and Councillor Livingston and Councillor East are doing a fantastic job out there. But it was good to see that overall there was no ratepayers who were affected by this, and what we are doing is just validating the resolutions retrospectively for about the last 9 years, 2003-4 to 2012 and 13. It is a tough job for the Christchurch City Council, Mr Speaker. I was on Chris Lynch on Monday morning with my colleague Clayton Cosgrove talking about the political issues in Canterbury. And quite often we are asked to comment on local government performance, on mayors, but I must say that it's not really our place to give running commentary too much on their performance. But it was a great opportunity to take the Select Committee down to Christchurch and see what is happening down there. And there is a lot of hope. There is a lot of hope, Mr Speaker. And I must say that at the end of the day, we are delivering in Christchurch. The previous speaker from the Green Party mentioned about the white elephant of the rugby stadium, which I thought I had to pick up on, Mr Speaker, because at the end of the day, Canterbury is the best rugby region in the world, and we need a stadium to reflect that. Like the Hagley Oval. Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. So, can I just say, Mr Speaker, to summarise, really, we are one region, one Canterbury, and I'm very happy to be one-eyed. Thank you, Mr Speaker.